The mechanic and the translator, the hydroponics bay, hummed with the gentle vibration of life support systems as I adjusted the nutrient flow to the tomato plants. 3 months aboard the Harmony's Edge, and I still couldn't believe humanity had made it this far. The first interstellar colony ship, carrying 10,000 souls to establish New Geneva on Kepler 442c. My name's Marcus Webb, and I'm just a maintenance engineer, nothing special, really. I keep the ship's systems running while the important people make history. That's where I first saw her. Zara worked in the linguistics department, part of the team preparing for potential first contact scenarios. She was different from the other crew members, taller, more graceful, with an otherworldly quality that made people pause mid-conversation when she entered a room. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that seemed to shift with her emotions, and her eyes held depths that suggested she'd seen things the rest of us couldn't imagine. The atmospheric processors are running at 97% efficiency, I reported during our daily maintenance briefing. Captain Rodriguez nodded absently, his attention focused on the navigation charts displayed on the holographic projector. Good work, Webb. What about the environmental controls in Section C? All green, sir. Though I did notice some unusual readings from the linguistics lab. The translation algorithms are processing data at rates that shouldn't be possible with our current hardware. That's when Zara spoke up from her position at the communications console. Her voice carried a musical quality that made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't name. The improvements are due to optimization of the quantum resonance patterns in the translation matrix. I've been working on streamlining the linguistic analysis protocols. Captain Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Impressive. The eggheads at command said those systems were already at peak efficiency. I watched Zara's skin shift to a deeper shade of blue. What I'd learned was her equivalent of a blush. I have experience with similar systems. The outer colonies develop creative solutions with limited resources. After the briefing, I found myself lingering in the corridor outside the linguistics lab. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, I could see Zara working at her console, her fingers dancing across the interface with impossible precision. She moved like someone who'd operated similar equipment 1,000 times before, despite this being her first assignment aboard an interstellar vessel. Need something, Webb? Her voice startled me from my observation. Just checking the environmental systems, I lied, then immediately felt guilty. Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to grab some coffee. The real stuff, not the synthetic blend from the dispensers. She turned to face me fully, and I noticed how her eyes seemed to contain flecks of starlight. I'd like that, Marcus. I'd like that very much. As we walked toward the crew lounge, I couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was more significant than a simple coffee invitation. Something about the way she moved, the way she seemed to anticipate the ship's gravitational adjustments, suggested mysteries I was only beginning to glimpse. The ship hummed around us, carrying us toward an uncertain future among the stars. Gravity and grace. Observation lounge was nearly empty during gamma shift, which made it perfect for our unofficial coffee dates. Zara sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of the precious real coffee I'd managed to acquire from the senior staff reserves. The stars beyond the viewport painted shifting patterns of light across her luminescent skin. Tell me about Earth, she said, her voice carrying that melodic quality that made my heart skip. What was it like growing up there? I laughed, suddenly self-conscious about my mundane background. Nothing exciting. Small town in Colorado, mountains everywhere. My dad ran a repair shop, taught me how to fix things with my hands. Mom was a teacher. Pretty standard stuff. Standard, she repeated, as if testing the word. I think there's beauty in the standard, Marcus. In the everyday moments that make life feel real. What about you? The outer colonies must have been fascinating. Something flickered across her face, too quick to interpret, but it made her skin shift to a deeper hue. Different. Harsh environments teach you to adapt quickly. We learned to read the signs, to anticipate problems before they became critical. She demonstrated by casually steadying her mug 3 seconds before the ship's gravity generators made their routine adjustment. I'd seen her do similar things dozens of times, small actions that suggested an almost supernatural awareness of the ship's systems. "How do you do that?" I asked. "Do what?" "You always know when the gravity's going to fluctuate. Even our sensors don't predict it that accurately." Zara's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Growing up on the outer colonies, you learn to feel the rhythm of machines. Life support systems have their own heartbeat. Over the following weeks, our coffee meetings became the highlight of my shifts. I found myself looking forward to her stories about life on the frontier, the way she described stellar phenomena with poetic precision, how she could make the most complex scientific concepts sound like fairy tales. But it was the small things that made me fall for her. The way she hummed while working, creating melodies that seemed to resonate with the ship's harmonic frequencies. How she always saved the last bite of her meal for me during our shared dinners. The soft expression on her face when she thought. No one was watching, as if she was carrying the weight of beautiful secrets. "Marcus," she said one evening as we watched a nebula drift past the viewport, "do you ever wonder what we'll find when we reach New Geneva? New challenges, I suppose. New things to fix, new systems to maintain. Why?" She was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through subtle color changes that I'd learned indicated deep thought. "Sometimes I wonder if we're prepared for what's waiting out there. If we're ready to face the unknown." "You mean first contact? The possibility of alien life?" "Something like that." She looked at me with those impossible eyes, and I felt like she was trying to communicate something beyond words. "Marcus, what would you do if you discovered someone you cared about wasn't exactly who you thought they were?" The question hung in the air between us, like a quantum superposition, existing in multiple states simultaneously. I reached across the table and took her hand, noting how her skin seemed to pulse with warmth at my touch. I'd trust that the person I fell for was real, regardless of the circumstances. The heart doesn't lie, Zara. Her skin brightened with what I'd learned was her equivalent of tears, though no moisture appeared. "You're a good man, Marcus Webb. Better than you know." As we sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars paint stories across the darkness, I realized I was completely, irrevocably in love with this extraordinary woman. Whatever secrets she carried, whatever mysteries surrounded her origins, I knew with absolute certainty that my feelings were real. The ship continued its journey toward New Geneva, carrying us toward revelations that would test everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the nature of humanity itself. The confession, the maintenance shaft in Section C, was cramped, poorly lit, and definitely not the romantic setting I'd imagined for this moment. But when the ship's primary communication array started throwing error codes during our approach to the New Geneva system, romance had to take a back seat to keeping 10,000 colonists alive. "Hand me the molecular spanner," I called out to Zara, who had volunteered to assist despite this being far outside her job description. Her linguistic expertise had somehow translated into an intuitive understanding of the ship's systems that left our engineering team baffled. "The resonance frequency is off by 0.03%, she said, passing me the tool. "If you adjust the quantum alignment matrix first, the error codes should resolve." I stared at her in the dim light of my work lamp. "How do you know?" That's advanced engineering theory." Her skin shifted to that deeper blue hue I'd come to recognize as her version of embarrassment. "I've been studying the technical manuals. I wanted to understand your work better." The simple statement hit me like a plasma discharge. She'd been learning advanced engineering, not for career advancement or academic curiosity, but to understand my world better, to be closer to me. Zara, I said, setting down the spanner and turning to face her fully in the confined space. I need to tell you something. She went very still, her luminescent skin dimming to barely visible levels. Marcus, I love you. The words came out in a rush, 3 months of carefully controlled emotions finally breaking free. I know it's complicated. We're colleagues. We're on a mission. But I can't keep pretending these feelings don't exist. You're the most incredible person I've ever met, and I'm completely, hopelessly in love with you. The silence stretched between us for what felt like eternity. Then slowly, her skin began to brighten with warm golden light, and a smile spread. Across her face that could have powered the ship's reactors. You love me, she whispered, as if testing the words. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. She reached up and touched my face, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw. With impossible gentleness. Marcus Webb, you beautiful, wonderful, impossible man. I love you too. More than you could ever know. The kiss that followed was electric, literally tiny sparks of bioluminescence dancing between our lips. Her skin pulsed with waves of color that seemed to synchronize with my heartbeat. In that cramped maintenance shaft, surrounded by the humming machinery that kept us alive, we found something that transcended the physical limitations of our situation. When we broke apart, I saw something in her eyes that made my chest tighten with concern. Joy, yes, but also a deep sadness that seemed to come from some profound inner conflict. Zara, what's wrong? Her smile remained, but tears, actual tears, not the light-based equivalent I'd seen before, began to streak down her cheeks. I'm so happy, Marcus, and so terrified. Terrified of what? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, her skin cycling through rapid color changes that I'd never seen before. There are things about me, about my past, that I haven't told. You, important things. I don't care about your past. I care about you, right now, in this moment. You might care when you learn the truth. Her voice was barely audible above the ship's ambient noise. Marcus, I'm not. The ship's intercom crackled to life, cutting off her words. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We're receiving a transmission from the new Geneva system. It appears to be first contact. My blood turned to ice. First contact. The possibility we'd all prepared for, but never quite believed would happen. Zara's expression shifted to something that looked suspiciously like recognition mixed with dread. We have to go, she said, already moving toward the shaft exit. Zara, wait. What were you going to tell me? She paused at the threshold, her back to me. That I love you, Marcus Webb. No matter what happens next, remember that everything I feel for you is real. As we hurried toward the bridge, I couldn't shake the feeling that our confession had been both a beginning and an ending. That the universe had chosen this moment to test the strength of our newly declared love in ways neither of us could have imagined. The ship's corridors seemed to pulse with tension as we made our way forward, toward revelations that would change everything. The revelation the bridge was chaos controlled by training and discipline. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center of the tactical display, his face grim as he studied the incoming transmission data. The main screen showed a fleet of ships unlike anything in human-design organic curves and crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. Webb, get that communication array online, Rodriguez barked as I entered. Whatever you did in the maintenance shaft, it's boosted our reception by 300%. I glanced at Zara, who had taken her position at the linguistics console. Her skin had gone completely pale, almost translucent, and her hands moved across. The interface with the practiced precision of someone who'd done this countless times before. Captain, she said, her voice steady despite the tension I could see in her shoulders. I'm detecting linguistic patterns in the transmission. It appears to be a greeting protocol, along with ... a request for someone specific. Someone specific? Rodriguez moved closer to her station. What kind of request? The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that made my breath catch. The being on the screen was humanoid, but clearly not human tall, elegant, with skin that shifted through the same spectrum of colors I'd seen in Zara. Behind the primary figure, I could see others of the same species, all watching with expressions of intense anticipation. "They're asking for their ambassador," Zara whispered, her voice breaking. "The one who is sent to evaluate human capabilities and determine if we could be trusted with contact." The pieces clicked into place with the inevitability of a stellar collapse. Zara's impossible knowledge of our systems, her ability to predict, the ship's mechanical rhythms, her otherworldly beauty, the way she moved with such grace, it all made horrible, wonderful sense. "You're not from the outer colonies," I said, my voice barely audible. She turned to face me, and I saw my own reflection in her impossible eyes. "Marcus, you're their ambassador. You're the alien." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. Every eye turned to Zara, who stood frozen at her console like a statue carved from starlight and regret. "Is this true?" Rodriguez asked, his hand moving unconsciously toward his sidearm. Zara's skin brightened with the bioluminescent equivalent of tears. "Yes, I am Zara Thiel of the Luminary Collective. I was sent to infiltrate your colony ship and assess human intentions before formal contact." "And your assessment?" Rodriguez's voice was cold, professional. "That humans are capable of remarkable kindness, courage, and love. That they deserve to be welcomed as equals in the galactic community." Her eyes found mine across the bridge. "That some humans are worth loving, even when that love complicates everything." The alien on the screen began speaking in musical tones that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull. Zara listened with obvious distress, her skin cycling through rapid color changes that I'd learned indicated extreme emotional turmoil. "What are they saying?" Rodriguez demanded. They're pleased with my report. They want to begin formal diplomatic relations." Zara's voice was hollow. "They also want me to return to the fleet for debriefing and reassignment." "Reassignment?" The word came out as a croak. She looked at me with an expression that held all the grief of dying stars. "I was never meant to stay, Marcus. This was always supposed to be temporary. I was supposed to gather intelligence and leave before forming any ... attachments." "But you did form attachments," I said, stepping closer despite the weapons now trained on her by the security team. "You told me you loved me. I do love you." The words burst out of her like a solar flare. "That's the problem. I love you so much that I've compromised my mission, my people's trust, everything I was supposed to be." The alien on the screen spoke again, more urgently this time. Zara's skin went completely dark, the bioluminescence fading to barely visible levels. "They're giving me a choice," she said quietly. "Return to the fleet and resume my duties as a diplomatic liaison, or remain with the humans and be considered a defector. Either way, I lose something precious." I reached out and took her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of her skin against mine. "You don't have to choose alone. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Her smile was radiant despite the tears streaming down her face. "You would really stay with me, even knowing what I am? Even knowing I lied to you? You didn't lie about loving me. That's the only truth that matters." As we stood there, human and alien, facing an impossible choice between love and duty, I realized that the real first contact hadn't happened on this bridge. It had happened in quiet moments over coffee, in shared laughter, in the simple act of two souls recognizing something precious in each other. The universe had brought us together across the vast distances between stars, and now it was asking us to choose what we valued most. The standoff on the bridge stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Captain Rodriguez kept his weapon trained on Zara while she maintained her position at the communications console, her skin cycling through colors that spoke of internal conflict too complex for words. "Ambassador," Rodriguez said finally, his voice carrying the weight of command, "I need to know your people's intentions. Are we looking at an invasion fleet?" Zara's hand tightened around mine. "No, the Luminary Collective is a peaceful alliance of species. We've been watching human expansion for decades, waiting to see if your kind would mature enough for contact. Your colony ship was the test how you'd handle the journey, how you'd treat each other, how you'd respond to the unknown. And we passed with flying colors." Her smile was sad, but genuine. "You welcomed me without question, showed me kindness I didn't expect, and taught me that love can exist between species that evolved on different worlds. That's more than many civilizations manage." The alien fleet leader spoke again, their musical tones carrying unmistakable authority. Zara listened with obvious distress, her bioluminescence fading to barely perceptible levels. They're ordering me to return immediately," she translated. "The collective is pleased with the success of first contact, but they consider my emotional attachment to humans a security risk. They want me recalled for psychological evaluation and memory adjustment." Memory adjustment? I felt ice form in my veins. They would remove my memories of this time, of you, of everything that made me compromise my objectivity. Tears streamed down her face, leaving trails of light on her skin. "I would forget that I ever loved you, Marcus." The choice crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. "Then we run." "What?" Rodriguez spun toward me, his weapon now tracking between targets. "We run. The ship's engines are at full capacity. Our navigation systems are locked onto New Geneva, and we have 10,000 colonists who deserve to reach their new home. We complete the mission. Webb, she's an alien spy. She's the woman I love." I stepped between Rodriguez and Zara, my heart pounding, but my resolve absolute. "And she's choosing to stay with us instead of returning to her people. That makes her human in every way that matters." Zara's skin blazed with golden light. "Marcus, you don't understand what you're suggesting. If I don't return, the collective might consider it an act of war. Then we make sure that doesn't happen." I turned to Rodriguez. "Captain, request permission to address the collective directly." Rodriguez stared at me as if I'd suggested juggling antimatter. "You want to what?" "I want to make them an offer they can't refuse, something that benefits both species." After a moment that stretched like eternity, Rodriguez nodded. "Do it." I stepped forward to the communications console, acutely aware that my next words would determine the fate of human-alien relations for generations to come. Zara's hand found mine, her touch giving me strength. "Honored members of the Luminary Collective," I began, hoping my voice carried more confidence than I felt. "I am Marcus Webb, maintenance engineer aboard the human colony ship Harmony's Edge. I stand before you not as a diplomat or a leader, but as a man who has fallen in love with your ambassador." The alien leader's expression shifted to something that might have been curiosity. "Your ambassador has completed her mission with remarkable success. She has gathered intelligence about human capabilities, assessed our character, and determined that we are worthy of contact. But in doing so, she has also discovered something equally valuable, that love can exist between species, that understanding can bridge the gap between different worlds." I felt Zara's hand tighten around mine. "I propose a new kind of diplomatic relationship. Let Zara remain as the first permanent ambassador to humanity, not as a spy, but as a bridge between our peoples. Let our love be the foundation for a new era of cooperation and understanding." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. On the screen, the collective leader conferred with their advisors in musical tones that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull. Finally, they spoke. Zara listened with obvious amazement, her skin brightening with each word. They're intrigued by the proposal, she translated. They say that if love can exist between species, it might be the key to true understanding. They're willing to establish a permanent diplomatic mission, with me as the first ambassador. And your memories? Intact? They want to study this phenomenon, to understand how emotional bonds can form across species barriers. Rodriguez lowered his weapon. And the fleet? They're standing down. The collective is pleased with the outcome and interested in formal diplomatic relations. I pulled Zara into my arms, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine. So what happens now? Now we build something new, she said, her voice filled with wonder. A bridge between worlds, a future where love proves that the universe is smaller than we thought. As the Harmony's Edge continued its journey toward New Geneva, now escorted by ships that represented friendship rather than threat, I realized that we had accomplished something remarkable. Not just first contact, but first love proof that the heart recognizes no boundaries, whether they be of species, planet, or star. The universe had brought us together across impossible distances, and love had made us choose each other over duty, fear, and the unknown. In the end, it wasn't humanity's technology or military might that had impressed the collective. It was our capacity to love someone completely different from ourselves. And in that love, both species had found hope for a future written in the stars.